Hey folks, how you doing? Good to see you. Oh my gosh, look at these fine folks in chat. I see History Professor and Mark and DraftStat and all sorts of cool folks. So good to have you aboard. We're gonna play our sixth true session of Lord of the Rings 5e, our Gondorian centered campaign. We've got this session and we've got one more, and then we're done and we're gonna play something else. I'm excited though to get into this. It's been several weeks since we've gotten to go back into Middle Earth. Our party, of Gondorians has been traveling through southern Gondor and Harad on a diplomatic mission. Um, Perhaps a fool's mission, but a mission nonetheless. Ulysses, I think you volunteered. Would you like to give a recap real quick?
Sure. In the last session, we departed from Abracon, and as we were doing so, we made a parlay with with a leader who had greeted us when we first approached Abracon, and asked if we could have a banner of Abracon with us. And it took some finagling, but we ended up achieving that goal, and we went forth with it. Um, we debated as a fellowship which way to go to Umbar, and decided to go in a path that was pretty due west for a while. We went down towards the river, uh, but I think that the most interesting things we realized is, one, as we got towards Umbar, we just realized this is a city that there's been six swaps of control between Gondor and Black Numenorians over thousands of years, and we are very much the enemy. Um, and it was a long journey through the wilderness. Zachariah had a most interesting encounter with a blue wizard in the woods while hunting, and received a scroll which lists in detail the backstory of eight Numenorian descending people in Umbar. So almost like a, a gallery of folks we may or may not encounter. Um, but we did run into some rough patches of encountering large encampments of Umbar troops, which made us divert ourselves. Such and so that when we got to Umbar, we each took a shadow point, and then because of the fatigue buildup, Crithiel and Garwin both failed their fatigue rolls, so they're going to suffer a -1 to their D20 checks. Uh, and you also, uh, Crithiel did something extraordinary that I just don't have my notes remembering, but it was so extraordinary that you did the rare thing in this game, this campaign, and you awarded inspiration to Crithiel. And as we approached the gate of Umbar, Crithiel spruced up the way that Silmarion was looking and the horse was looking, and made sure the banners were all right, and gave me, and basically put me into that best condition of being a ambassador from Minas Tirith, and so gave me the advantage. So uh, that
Perfect.
is where we're at.
That's right. I flew off the horse.
That's right. That's worth a lot of inspiration. Um, so yeah, let's see here. I'm gonna present a little bit of our map. Um, let's see here. How should we do this? Let's see. Let's do this one here. Um, there we go. Perfect. Cool. So yeah, you let's share a couple of things with you guys as a kind of a recap. A couple of other things that we may have that we didn't quite catch on that. One is that you witnessed the ruins of the Great Pillar as you neared Umbar. This is kind of a monument of Numenor and of the prowess of men. This was definitely raised um, as kind of a memorial or a remembrance of the terror that the Numenorians inflicted upon Sauron and his eventual surrender to men here at Umbar. So this is though fallen into heavy disarray and into ruin. Um, then yeah, you saw the city of the Corsairs. You got close. I think I shared this picture with you. It's a sprawling city. The interesting thing I think we noted is that this is a city that's been besieged numerous times and has kind of rebuilt itself several times. And so there's remnant ideas of Numenorian uh, construct here, certainly, but there's also a lot of like Haradrim influences at this time. And one of the perfect blends of the two is the gates. The gates to the city, at least the ones that you're coming up on, are perhaps not as resplendent as gates of Minas Tirith, certainly not as old, but old in their own right, and certainly impressive, flanked on either side by these mummoks carved of stone. It's a pretty impressive sight. I think we, as you mentioned, Ulysses, I think we ended with you right here at the gates. We hadn't gone in yet. Because you have to entreat. You have to, theoretically, you'll have to, confirm who you are, and what you're about before you can get inside the city. So that's where we're at there. We're going to dive right in, I think, right at that moment. So you can see up on the gates numerous armed individuals looking down on you. This gate here at the moment is closed. You could hear the commotion of a vibrant city beyond. You can smell like the salt on the air pouring off the ocean. In some ways, this city is going to remind you of Abrakan because both are influenced by Harad. But what definitely makes this one different, and unlike the other cities that you've been to in the frequent weeks, is Umbar is a coastal city. It's got a massive harbor, and so that the smells and the breeze and everything like that makes this city have like a life of its own and something that you haven't really experienced. I mean, you could maybe argue that you sent some of this in Pelargir, but Pelargir is way up into like the river and not on the coast of the sea. Only people like those of you who are from Belfalas and the coast in your own right would have ever experienced a city quite like this.
Is it unusual that the gates are closed if it is a sort of vibrant, happening port city? Should there not be traffic going in and out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it is. It is a little unusual that the gates are closed. You would have expected them to be open, and you can kind of tell as you get close now here that there is like several. I was gonna say caravans, but it's not like a ton of people. But there's probably like half a dozen steeds and carts kind of parked outside the gate here. Multiple people kind of waiting to get in. You can see like the people towards the front are kind of reclined in their cart, trying to find some shade in their own belongings, and look like they've maybe been here for a little while.
only a little while. So I just turned to everybody. Okay, well, they closed the doors for us. That's lovely. And I'll just Ulysses, Solmarian, you wanna do the honors?
Is it easy for us to kind of identify a guard at the gate and
Yeah.
show up?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
yeah.
we will. I'm on horseback. I've got, I think to remind the chat audience, we're flying on a long pole the banners of Gondor, Abercon, and Harmondon. And my shield, I know, bears the symbol of the white tree.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just imagine from a dress and attire perspective, the group of us look like we're from the north.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll stride forward and I'll hail the guard. I'll say, "Hail, guard of the great city of Umbar. We bid entry. We wish to have audience with the captain of the haven."
You see, like as you call out and make this proclamation, the people that were kind of lounging at the gate with you, kind of like all stand up and they're all watching you very attentively. You can hear whispers, people like commenting on to each other about marveling at you and the oddness of your arrival. The guard up on the top of the gate, several of them kind of like look at you. You can see again they converse with themselves for a moment, and then one of them calls down and says, "The captain is aware of your arrival. He wonders why you come from the east and why you fly the flag of Abercon."
Somebody wanted to make a cameo with this little guy out there. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Hello.
That's awesome.
We are servants of Ecthelion on a mission to make a treaty with our southern neighbors. And so in that effort, we traveled south and visited Harmondon and visited Abercon en route to our final destination, the great city of Umbar. And these flags signify that we have had successful visits, peaceful visits that have expanded understanding and dialogue.
The person at the gate, the guard, calls down again and says,
He's not up in her bed anymore. She's screaming.
"Who have you?
bring them down if you need me to.
Who do you bring with you?" And there are more yet to arrive.
Nope. This is our party. We have 4 representatives of Gondor before you from 4 distinct parts of our kingdom. I am Solmarian. I am a Thane of Belfalis, a maritime province like your great city. This is Crithiel. She is a warden of our lush farmlands up beyond Duin. This is Zachariah, a lore master and a scholar from the White City itself. And here is Garwin, the ranger. who travels the lands of the entire kingdom.
The guard seems to be you kind of like see them like look down at something as you're calling out the names, and you catch the glimpse of like a piece of parchment or a scroll, like he's referencing something as you're saying this, and as you finish, he says, "Those are the names we were said to expect," and you see him kind of give a nod to a couple of people. He says, "You'll be granted access to the city. Mind yourselves." And then, with that, you hear the creak of the gate. And as it opens up, it's not a huge gate. This is not like maybe 2 carts could squeeze by abreast, but it's not meant to be like this massive thing. But as it opens up, you can see that kind of standing there just as it opens is a man seated on a horse. The horse looks not like some of the smaller horses that are typical of this area that you've seen so far, but it looks like a horse that you would have seen from Gondor or from Rohan, something like that, right? A massive steed. And seated upon it, you're probably 30 yards away from this guy, is a man who is like balding white hair, robe or garb, clothing of burgundy with gold accents, and looks like there's an air of militant about him. I'm going to show you an image here. And we'll make sure the chat can see it here too.
Ooh.
Lord Tywin.
Yes, very similar. Like, yeah, if you're listening to this, if you're not watching it, very much like the Tywin Lannister atmosphere. Yes. He rides out. You can see a long sword affixed to him. It's not drawn or anything like this. Still sheathed. You can see that he is riding under a banner of Umbar, and he approaches you on his own. And as he gets close enough, he says, "I am he that you have asked to treat with. You speak to the captain of the Haven."
We would know whether, we would know the significance of that title. Captain of the Haven means leader of the whole city, mayor, city-state commandant.
I think one of you guys made a check early on in the campaign that the captain of the Haven is basically more than a title. It's kind of in many ways a name that is adopted by the leader of Umbar. Umbar is ruled by this person, in certainly almost like a militant oversight, like the whole city is an army, sort of an idea, or at least that the city is there is a military oversight over the entire city, and the captain of the Haven is at its head.
I guess the military aspect of it kind of explains why he would meet us at the gate, because it seems like somebody in a high position in such a big city would not be, out at the gate.
Yeah, you immediately maybe go to thinking about Abra Khan and the other places that you've been recently, and every other time the lords have met you, in a throne room or a longhouse or something of that nature, and this man is meeting you at the gate, and the gate was closed. Very much, you get the sense that first and foremost, this is a city that is prepared for battle at all times, and this is a man, as he now is just within 10 yards of you. This is a man that looks to be a veteran of many wars.
Are we on horseback?
I would assume you are, yeah.
So when he introduces himself, Crithel will dismount and essentially lead her horse walking as a sort of as a sign of deference, I guess maybe is the word. I don't know. And she will say, "You honor us by greeting us in person."
He looks down at you, gives you an inclination of the head, and will say, it may be an honor, but it is also a necessity. It has been a long time since those in strong allegiance to Gondor have entered this place. We would not let that happen without the closest of eyes.
Captain of the Haven. Is it preferred that we call you that, or do you also have a given name that we may honor you with?
Simply Captain is fine.
Well, Captain, we bid you greetings and good tidings from Ecthelion, steward of Gondor and representative of the line of kings of Gondor. And we appreciate the opportunity to meet you and see your great city.
But you did not come on a sightseeing expedition. You came with purpose.
100%.
Yay!
Hey, Zach. You're muted, but that's all good. We're happy to have you anyways.
Zach, we just gained entrance to the gates of Umbar, and we are greeted, as Crithiel observed, strangely, we're greeted by the captain of the Haven, the military leader of the city, on horseback at the gates. And we're just beginning to have exchange with him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We come to talk about a treaty of understanding between Gondor and Umbar, a treaty that will establish a peace and pave a path to mutual prosperity.
He says, I'm aware. It's a massive undertaking you've accepted. I will say, I give no small surprise and certainly some bit of relief to see you here. I know that the journey from the White City could not have been a simple one. And as unlikely as your quest is to bear fruit, I would not have seen you fall along the highway. You kind of look around as if the thought of that brings him an awareness of the crowd that is starting to gather. And you can see a lot of dark looks on the individuals that are observing this exchange. And he says, well then, come. Let's have you enter the city proper. give you a sense of the place, and we can speak further elsewhere.
Hello.
There you go, Zach.
Hey, god dang. Okay, thank you.
You're
Good.
good. You're good.
Can I sense anything? Again, this is perhaps not. I mean, it is not in a bad way, but it is not quite the greeting that perhaps we were expecting. Not that we had necessarily a clear expectation, but it certainly wasn't this. When he says that he is glad to see us, that strikes me as unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, you definitely have a paper, right, signed by him, granting you safe passage here, right, on the road. That was not listened to or abided by certain individuals on the road, but he certainly put his name to you. You should be allowed to enter Umbar and to get all the way here. So when he says that he's relieved to see you here and wouldn't have you die on the highway, it probably has less to do with him feeling any sort of warm-hearted feeling towards you, and more so that he put his name to something and it didn't, and it worked out, so he doesn't look like a liar and
Okay.
ne'er-do-well.
Yeah, see, Krithale would have missed that subtext a little bit, so I'm glad it got clarified. She's like, "Oh, right, he just doesn't want to look bad for his word." That explains it.
Yes.
Okay, she's not going to say anything.
Fair enough. Mr. Francis, this as you enter the city, Garwin, I'm going to actually let you get right into the thick of things here. As you're riding into the city, I would like for you to make me a test. Let's see here. I need a perception or an insight. If whichever one you have proficiency in or whatever you feel good about, I'll let either one happen at the moment.
With the -1.
With a -1, because you're exhausted. Always. Yeah. And you're muted again.
Still muted.
What the freaking hell?
Oh, now you're okay.
Now you-
What's the freaking weird? This is stupid. I don't know why it's doing this to me.
You're just really soft, even now.
I don't know why.
There you go.
Now you're not. Yeah, there you go.
It sounds like you're a DJ now on the late shift.
Welcome back to NPR. We're going to be talking about some ghost stories that happened on the road today.
You said, I'm sorry, say that again. You said I
Yeah.
could do either what now?
Either a perception or an insight check.
Perception or insight check. Why won't my character sheet open?
Good question.
It's just loading that little D20.
Mine's opening
there it
pretty
is,
well.
There it is. Oh my god. Okay, let me do. I'll do perception.
Yeah, you have no problem.
Awesome. Okay, that's a 14.
Hey.
All right. So it's not high for you. It would be next to impossible for anyone else. But it's not high for you. As you ride into the city, you recognize someone who is quite obviously not in the garb that you would have expected, but the face is somebody that you would have a hard time missing. That is this guy right here. You should be able to see that.
Oh yeah. Ivan.
Yeah, Ivander. So this is not the garb you would have expected, but you know Ivander, and as you're like riding past, this guy makes eye contact with you, and gives you a nod, as if acknowledging that you see him and he sees you. Ivander is another one of the rangers of Ecthelion.
Nice.
Mm.
And you would guess that he probably, you don't know why he's here necessarily, but you know that the reason that he is here at this gate must certainly have been to exchange this look with you and let you know that you are not alone as individuals of Gondor in the city.
That's good to know. I like that.
Nice.
The rest of you, or all of you at this point, can ride on through, and he, Evander does not follow you, at least that you can tell. He probably is following you, you would guess, Zach, but you would probably not notice it.
From a distance.
Yeah, from a distance, exactly. You know, the build of Umbar is, you can tell once you're in here, is high walls, very similar to Minas Tirith in that respect. You go through several series of gates as you progress through the city, and you get the sense that much like Minas Tirith, Umbar is now being built. Whatever it was before, at one point, certainly was a stronghold at one point. Whatever it was in the meantime, now under the watchful eye of the last however many generations of captains, Umbar is, 1/4, 1/3 trade city, and 2/3, 3/4, stronghold and bastion of the South. A couple things of note as you would ride through. I'll give you another visual here. One of the things that's interesting, again, that kind of paints a different picture, is that there are streets that you're definitely riding on, but there are also canals, riverways, artificial riverways that are that push up into the city a ways. You aren't at the port itself at the moment to know what that might look like exactly, but here you can see that flat bottom boats and things like that are hauling goods and individuals, and you see several hauling soldiers around the town. And it seems like there's a couple different ways of getting people to and from. You see a lot of these guys, though, in the boats, keeping an eye on you and patrolling the city in general. Corsairs. Here, you've never seen them in these numbers. Most of you have probably never seen a Corsair, especially not outside the last few weeks, and especially not garbed like this and in resplendent. Think about how in Minas Tirith, they have the polished steel and the cloaks and everything. The uniforms of Minas Tirith are a cut above many other places in Gondor. In the same way, here at Umbar, the Corsairs are imposing in a way that you haven't seen yet on your journey.
And Zach, how does the military presence here compare with Abercon?
Abercon had military. They obviously they came out to meet you and things of that nature. But here, what you'll read is that these are grizzled, hardened individuals, where at Abercon, that's a city of vibrancy and that's alive, and the military is there as a peacekeeping force, but this is a military that is a battle hardened force, and so it's very much more serious in tone, and you would guess more difficult to master in a fight.
Who would they have been fighting most recently? I mean, they haven't fought Gondor in a generation or more. There's brigands on the roads. Are they picking fights farther south? Are they, fighting the incursions from Mordor?
Mm-hmm.
Who are these guys fighting?
You don't know that exactly, which is worth noting, but you would probably be aware that there's a couple of things. One is that while Gondor hasn't seen a significant foray in a few generations, it's the Corsairs sail all up and down that western coast of Middle Earth, and so they may have been conflicting with people further north. They could be conflicting with people further south, or it's entirely possible that they're hardened by some other means. But like the Emperor's troops in Dune, right? That are battle hardened and test against each other before they ever face a different foe. Who knows? But certainly these are people you can get the sense just looking at them that they have seen fights. You're just not sure where.
And Zach, when we walk around the city, in terms of ancestry, are these people and the Corsairs particularly, do they seem like they're of Numenorian extraction, or are they more Hadorim, or are they a mixture, or are they something else?
I'll give you some information, but Ulysses, why don't you go ahead as Silmarian is kind of looking at these folks and trying to get a read on that. Why don't you give me an insight check? See what you can deduce and read in here.
One moment. $17.
Yeah, okay. Not too bad by a long shot. So you would read most of these people are like of Harad or are not of Numenorian descent. In fact, the only person that you're certain is likely to have something of Numenor in them is the captain who you are riding alongside or riding behind. There's a distinct visual difference between the captain and most of the people that you're seeing here. The captain is eventually going to take you towards one of these great towers that kind of it's less of like in Minas Tirith you have a lot of like spires, like tight, narrow towers that push up toward the heavens. Here, what you see is much more like bloated towers that are wider at the base and kind of sprawl out, but that do still reach upwards eventually. They're going to take you. He's going to take you to one of those. Outside it, he's going to dismount. He's going to hand his horse to a servant. There are several other servants that come out, and unless somebody is loath for it, they will take all of your horses and take them off somewhere as you're about to enter one of these bigger cathedral buildings. As he disembarks, dismounts, sees you doing the same, he will say, "You'll find us to be without much in the ways of formality or presentation. We prefer to cut straight to the heart of matters such as these.
Ulysses, just so you know, that Zachariah is going to take that as his cue that that we can drop more pretense than we probably ought to. So, just so you know, Zachariah is more than willing to let Samarian do talking and be the formal one. But when somebody says, well, we don't have much pretense, then Zachariah is going to take that as an opportunity to speak one's mind and assurance that someone else will do the same. And that he will not shut up at that point. So just giving you the fair warning, when Brian chimes in, that's because Zachariah is does not read that social cue well. I think that's been borne out in his interactions thus far.
I love it. There is
well noted.
There is, when you enter, I didn't find a great picture that I really was happy with for this, but I did find one that I think will come close. Something akin to this, but a little bit more polished, not without the rocks and things like that you see at the beginning there. But as you enter a place like this, what you'll see is that inside this very, very large building, there is additional, like almost additional buildings erected here, and different, like you can see different walls and structures kind of built to, I mean, there's a grandness to it. There's definitely certainly a beauty to it, but there's also, like, inside the walls of this building, there are multiple other layers of walls to reinforce certain aspects, and plenty of places to make this a defensible position, even of itself, from the inside or from the outside. You also get the feeling as you kind of like walk down into the main floor of this place that if you were an enemy in this place, that the ramparts around you would make this a killing floor pretty quickly. So that's kind of the idea behind what you're looking at right now.
Crithiel, what's your sense of this place?
It is not quite what I expected, but I think refreshing in a way that we may be able to speak freely here, or clearly. So we're in this big hall. Where are we being led?
Yeah, so he kind of take you to the base level, and then from there he took you on forward and into, basically, you can see that kind of at the base level here there are multiple large rooms, and from those large rooms and hallways branch out to more. And he doesn't take you to like a throne room or to any sort of like opulent location like that. What he takes you to instead is basically down a hall, into another large room, down another hall, and then into a side room, sort of a feel. There's a table in here, a meeting room of certainly, but the sense of this place is that it is out of the way, and not front and center.
Meeting room number 6, my favorite.
That's right.
I'm listening.
Go ahead.
Sorry, what is the situation with, I guess, security, or like, does he have a retinue? Like, is our way out barred?
Yeah. So he doesn't have a retinue, or at least he hasn't been riding with one, and there hasn't been like a heavy guard. But you can see, like, there have been soldiers all over the city, crawling all over the city since you have set foot into it. So, in that respect, you think that there's probably, 30 men within shouting distance, but nobody in the room with him. It's just you and him.
So we can kill him, but we won't get out alive.
That would be I mean, you could try to get out alive, I guess.
I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying, in logistical terms.
Yeah, logistical terms, you could definitely, you would be you four against him, certainly for several moments before anybody could get here. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that was meant as a very much an out of character expression in terms of. I want to be clear that I'm not contemplating assassinating him. Right?
What should we take from the fact that we're being escorted into meeting room 6, like this kind of off the beaten path, nondescript auxiliary space to theoretically negotiate what could be one of the most important treaties in recent history?
Well,
yeah, does it feel like the beginning of the Phantom Menace, where they're led into the room and then they start to poison the room? Or do we feel like this is a safe space?
I feel like if they put us in meeting room 6, it means that they do not view the likelihood of a most important treaty in recent history as a possibility.
Well, that's kind of what I'm
Otherwise,
saying. Do they feel threatened by us, or are they indifferent to us and they just don't care, or are they excited that we're here? Like, what is the feel of what does the air feel like? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I will say, without giving too much, because I think part of it is you guys reading what you will into it, but I will say that, like, what's noticeable from your time here is it's not that you were unnoticed and just, like, slinked in without anybody caring. Like, definitely people saw you come here, right? Like, 100%. However, there has been no fanfare. There has been no, like, heavy attention, no crowds other than what gathered at the beginning of the gate. And the read that you get on that, I think, is either it's not a big deal, and like every person in the city has been told it's not a big deal that Gondorian like just they don't care about you being here, which is unlikely, or this is a city that knows what's going on and was told to be a certain way about it.
Gotcha.
Now, why you're in meeting room 6? That's something that you're going to have to deduce or figure out yourself. But
now, one prep question. As Zachariah spent time reading through the dossier on the 18 individuals in Numenorian descent, do we know if the captain of the watch was one of those people in the dossier? And if so, what does Zachariah recall about the file?
Great question. So here's the thing about that file. That file has names. It is entirely possible that the captain is one of the people in that file. However, there is no one called Captain of the Haven in there. So you might be able to deduce, or you might be able to figure out if it's one of them. But until you do, these are names without faces.
all right. Well, he's in the room with us, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go full on nerd, and I'm gonna say, Captain, I must express that it is such an honor to leave the White City and to see places that I've only read about. The ancient Numenorian ruins we've passed, the watchtowers outside Harmondon, and of course, now to be in Umbar and to meet people and see the places that I have only read about and seen sketches and drawings of it. It is truly great to be here among you. I must say, and pardon my impertinence if you don't want to answer, but I've been reading up on genealogies and ancestries and the great families of Numenor, the great families of Minas Tirith, the great Gondorians and Harad, and the intermingling and the marriages, and I know it bears very little on the actual goings on, but I wondered, of the ruling families of the past and the present, of the military families, are the great families of old still in charge? Do the people of Umbar rely on a sense of nobility and continuity, or on courage and bravery of military might? What is it that gives the heart of this great city its might? Are the families still the same as those I've read of in years and centuries past? And of yourself, if you don't mind.
He kind of, there's a little light that kind of pops into his eyes as you ask your question. He kind of looks around as you're asking at the other three of you, kind of as Zachariah is talking. He kind of takes a moment to look at the rest, and then as you finish, he turns back and he says, an interesting way of starting our discussions. Umbar is a city unto its own. Has been for years. Has been for generations. Whatever claim I have, however I made my position here in the city of reality, it was not through birthright, but through, as you say, prowess, and through proving oneself in war. And then, as if kind of reconsidering his words slightly, he inclines his head. He says, not to say that one's birth can't have a hand in such things as well. Certainly it is easier to be recognized for deeds of valor and for power if you possess some of it by birthright from the beginning. But no one rules this city because their father ruled this city.
I put on my completely curious academic face, which is my regular face, and I say, and did your father rule this city?
He did not. And he you see, like, evidently that has set him into his eyes go distant, as if he's remembering his father and remembering certain things. He says, no, he did not rule this city. This is a new thing for our family, relatively. But we take it very seriously. And he'll look at you and he'll say, which is why I wonder why Gondor would send the four of you on a mission such as this. I must admit, I was taken aback by the initial entreaty, but when I was told whom I should expect, and upon seeing you at the gate, I must wonder for myself, is Gondor taking this city seriously? I don't know any of you. I don't believe I've ever heard of you. Perhaps your families have some small merit or aspect of note. Many do in the Northlands, but I find it odd that in this proposed hopeful meeting they would send no one of renown.
Well, with all due respect, and I kind of motion over to Samaria in particular, we pointed out to our new friends in Harmenden and Abrakan that if we had sent a small legion of 100 men, it might put you a bit more on edge. And if we sent the son of the steward, then he perhaps might be more of a target. Instead, they sent us a reasonable cross-section of the best that Gondor has to offer in terms of knowledge of the land, nobility, military prowess, and of course myself, scholarly wisdom. And they thought that 4 was a pretty good number, and it's proven quite well so far.
Enough, Zachariah. Captain, that is not a good way to start a treaty negotiation. My bloodline, I am a Thane of Belthalis, Captain of the Haven. My bloodline goes back to Numenor. My name is the name of the first Numenorian queen. I bleed purest of blood in this Middle Earth. I am not a middling or nobody in this world. The steward selected me to be the ambassador with the 3 of these fellowship partners because each of us represent the greatness of Gondor, and we wanted to show our best to you. Crithiel is a fighter beyond compare and would be second to no one in your corsairs, however battle-hardened they may be. Zachariah is a scholar, a lore master. He knows things from the libraries of the White City, things that go back into the depths of time before the foundation of this city. And Garwin represents the fraternity of rangers who keep the North safe and secure from the myriad threats that confront us. Not everyone, Captain, lives in a stronghold of strongholds built on a foundation of the greatest place founded by the great Numenorian Empire. But do not disparage the ambassadors before you, because in that you're gravely mistaken.
And as you said...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, and as you said, you don't rule this city because your father did. You made something of yourself. We had the opportunity to do the same for this mission. I think you should give us a chance.
No, I'm gonna go off book here. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna interrupt before the commander. What is it? What's his title again?
Captain of the Haven.
Captain. I had commander in my head. Before the captain chimes in, I'm gonna say, "Oh, now you've wounded their pride, and well, what's the point in doing that? I know that you're only throwing insults at us because you want to get us off on the defensive foot. I know that you're not taking this seriously, and of course, if you can shift the blame that we're not taking it seriously, then you can feel a little bit better about things, and you can have a bit more reason to say why things broke down, and you can say that the negotiations were useless from the start. And I know that's the plan, and I know that that's why you would insult me and my fair colleagues here. So now that you've done that and you've said that your piece, and of course they've said theirs, Could we go ahead and actually negotiate something?
He says, we might. He says, I know it's bad business sense to name one's price first. But as I said before, I'm interested in getting down to it. To some, he seems like not taken aback by you guys, but unsure how he wants to proceed here.
Captain, as you have no doubt surmised, and Lady Solmarian's introduction notwithstanding, you seem a practical man, and you will have noticed that in addition to Lady Solmarian's lineage, the rest of us were very much chosen for practicality, which I believe you will appreciate, and not necessarily for our lineage or whatnot. Not at least not all of us. Though I am a daughter of a duchess, I am here because my uncle Carwagan, who would regularly make this trip, was not fit to travel, and I was the more practical choice to come in his stead. So us being here is a matter of practicality as much as it is politics, and I think that we can speak in a practical manner, and it might be beneficial. It might be an unexpected benefit of having this particular cast of characters.
I like it. I like the context of practicality. I think we can work within those means. And the reality is, Gondor will send no one else. So, if they are the people that if you are the people that they have chosen to put in front of me, then you are the people that I must entreat with. And so, as opposed to wishing for others or wondering why not someone else, I will speak plain to you and see what can be done of it. Though, and he says, before I outline a few basic terms, I must admit, I have pondered since this proposal came through. I have pondered what Gondor could possibly be willing to sacrifice or acknowledge in order for this treaty to come about. I hesitate to imagine that anything that I would ask for, the bare bones of a term, would be something that would be acceptable. But perhaps I speak too ill of the White City and of the steward that sits there. Perhaps they are ready to entreat. Here are a few aspects for you to consider, and hopefully, if we're to do business, at least one or more of them we can cross off as reasoned and practical straight away. He says, I think that if a treaty is to be signed, treaties are typically done between two kingdoms, and thus I think the first measure of any treaty that is going to happen going forward would be Gondor finally taking the steps to recognize Umbar as a kingdom unto itself.
Go on.
He says, and if Gondor is going to acknowledge Umbar as a kingdom unto itself, then I would have an expectation that the steward ceases to sail his warships further south than the island of Tolfalas. And I would propose that if the expectation is that we are not to encroach upon Gondor's domain, then Gondor should not be allowed to encroach upon ours. Again, borders of a kingdom makes a lot of practical sense.
Hey, Zach, as you're doing this speech,
Mhm.
what? It's been a while since we had our audience with Ecthelion. What were the treaty parameters that Ecthelion gave us?
Don't give him anything.
Don't give
Talk
him
to him. Keep him busy.
What?
What he said was you cannot assign land of Gondor, property of Gondor, to anyone. You can't assign Gondor's people to anyone. So Gondor's land, Gondor's people are not yours to give away. If you can find a way of treating with them outside of that, but you can't promise an army. You can't promise workers. You can't promise you're going to send Gondorians to come work on rebuilding the fortress of Salentir. Can't happen. You can't say if he had said, "Oh, I want the island of Tolfalas," you can't hand over the island of Tolfalas to him. That's giving away land. If you can find a way to
change a diaper. Keep talking. I'm going to be right around the wall. I can hear everything.
You're good. Yeah. So land and people you can't give away. If you can find a different way, that's fine.
But in this context, is acknowledging Umbar as a kingdom giving away Gondorian land in that context?
I would say, and I'm not trying to be. I think that it's a gray area in the sense that. So if you look at the map that we have here, there's the river Hadrian, right? That flows just south of Harmenden and Salentir, right? That river is very much the boundaries of Harad as Gondor sees it. And so anything north of the river was 100% claimed by Gondor. 100% claimed by Gondor. Everything south of the river is acknowledged to be under the domain of the Haradrim. Umbar is a gray area because it's technically a Númenorian city, but it's in land claim acknowledged to be a part of Harad.
I feel in the same way that recognizing Eriador did not undermine the sovereignty of Gondor, that recognizing the sovereignty of Umbar should not transgress any direction we've gotten from Ecthelion. In fact, it almost is in the very nature of the treaty offering to begin with. However, this idea that we somehow agree to not let our ships sail beneath the island of Tolfalas is anathema to our claims on South Gondor. I will even say, Captain of the Havens, the very fact that we're here, that Ecthelion sent us, whether you stitch together practicalities, principles, or what have you, is implicit recognition that you are your own jurisdiction. If you would like Gondor to recognize officially you as a kingdom, we are happy to do that. But let us be clear. Our claims reach to the river south of Salentir and Harmenden. That is South Gondor, historically. And while we're willing to negotiate that we won't sail warships south of that river, those lands are not lands that we will cede to anybody else.
Well, perhaps I should add a final minimum note then. And this is, I understand that this may be the breaking point, but there are other people who do not sit at this table whose considerations must be kept. You have your steward and whoever else of the North folk that you answer to and whose considerations you must keep. And I have my own, but also my own allies and commitments there too. Long before Gondor proposed a treaty, I signed one myself with the Golden King. And while you fly their flag and his flag and seem to have managed to maneuver through his city without losing your head, I would say that my treaty with him outlines a world, a reality, where in future generations, when Gondor was reacquired, or perhaps in your term we would just say acquired by Elumbar, our treaty with Harad is that their borders would extend all the way to the Anduin, and this land that you call South Gondor would be incorporated into a new element of the Harad territories. And so while you claim that it is of Gondor's, and certainly at the moment it is land that is more in the grasp of Gondor than anyone else. And while I have no strong eagerness to hold the Harad Road and Harandor in general, there are others that wish to do so, and I must hold and bring their considerations to the table just as much as I bring my own. So the third element, to a minimum element to any treaty, would be that Gondor abandons everything south of the Anduin to be distributed amongst.
Let me pierce through the veil of your misunderstanding with the Golden King. He wants the throne of Gondor. He petitioned us to lead him in as a vanguard of his army to Minas Tirith so he could claim the king's throne. Captain of the Havens, your treaty with him may have been one of good intention and convenience, but he does not seek to have a paltry piece of land that is South Gondor. He seeks the White City itself. And that makes you a city-state on the shore.
It seems to be understood by both you and I at this point that the Golden King is ambitious, and his ambition knows no true bounds. If he managed to take South Gondor, he would want the north as well. And if he managed to secure Minas Tirith and the White City, his gaze would turn further north or to the west. He will never be satisfied with whatever he takes. That is something that I must contend with, not just today and not just tomorrow, but have contended with for years. And I will continue to do so. I acknowledge the reality that awarding Harad a parcel of land is only staving off an inevitable hunger for more. But the reality is that I have not signed a treaty with him that says that he has any claim to the White City or to anything north of the Anduin. I have signed a treaty with him that says that I will freely relinquish any claim to that land of Harandor, that land which he eyes now as being his northern extension. What comes after that is for others perhaps to decide in future generations, but I feel that I can stave off any conflict between Umbar and Harad simply by this understanding, and for yourself too, and for Gondor as well. Any treaty that we have, if you and I sign a treaty that is not to Harad's liking, they will push forward into along that road and up towards Pelargir, with or without me, with or without a treaty. So it's in your best interest.
This whole speculation, Captain, takes us to the heart of the matter. We're not here to resolve 6,000 years of political rivalries and contested bloodlines. We're here for practical purposes. A massive danger musters in the East. It's a danger to us all. It's a danger that can corrupt even the steadfast of people. And that Golden King sitting on his throne is closer to it than any of us. And he could likely succumb to seductive temptations at some point. So the point being, this is not a treaty to resolve once and forever all claims and all possibilities. It's simply to say, we share a foundational kinship, and we should have peace between us, while a greater threat marshals and musters to the east of us.
As you're saying this, Garwin, real quick here, Zach, one of the things that you probably have already you probably already thinking of this, but just make sure you've caught it. What he has proposed as a claim of Harad would include Ecthelion. Yeah. Again, you probably something you already had in mind, but certainly something that would not be exciting for a ranger.
Just something that I wanted to, I guess, especially observe when there is mention of ships sailing south. I wanted to see if there's any extra weight to those words. Like, essentially, does he know that right now that there are ships sailing south?
That's a great question.
Or is he being theoretical? And it's not something I would push or ask. It's more like, if he says ship sailing south, I'd be like, oh?
Yeah.
That
sounds... I mean, I know it's going to be a little bit hard for Crithiel, but could you give me an insight check to see what you can read, if there's subtext there?
It would not be hard. Insight is one of my best.
That's one of your best skills. Never mind.
It's my only social skill that I'm any good at. Everything else is... All right.
19. Yeah, you don't read any subtext into that. There's no, which is interesting. Which the fact that he says that and you read no subtext whatsoever to you would confirm that either Thorongil has not sailed out yet, or if he has, which you would expect him to have, he has managed to avoid the eyes of the Corsairs up to this point.
Which was the intention.
Which was
right?
the intent. Yeah.
So that's...
Yeah. But you would feel confident that he isn't trying to the captain isn't trying to catch you in a trap here of words because he knows that you've got other things going on elsewhere. He genuinely does not know of a fleet.
That bodes well potentially. The other thing, something that Zachariah was mentioning about the captain's lineage. As I'm kind of standing there, and Salmarian's done most of the talking, as it should be. I want to kind of closely examine his garb to see, does he maybe have a ring with a familiar crest? Does he have something that would that I might recognize as a family heirloom, even if I might not recognize what family?
Potentially, yes. That's a good question. why don't you give me an old lore check? And anybody who's proficient with old lore could make this roll as well.
Dice out here. So I got.
It's got
8
Zachariah
plus
written
one.
all over it.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah, no.
old lore. So I've got 15, and I want to say I get plus 1 d4 to investigation. Never mind. So yeah, I got a 15.
15. Okay.
I know, buddy.
Yeah. So, Crithael, you have this thought, and you look, and you don't notice anything. Brian, as Zachariah ponders similar things, and is still maybe looking at his notes from the Blue Wizard, and just thinking about things in general. You wonder something based off of what he said, and you start to put together some context. He isn't wearing a ring or anything like that that would indicate a house. However, you think you might have an idea of, if not the specifics, the situation in which this individual might be in. You think one of the things that has happened in Gondor over the last numerous generations is any family, any nobility that has had a problem or trouble, had a run-in with kings or stewards over the past however many generations, typically those families flee to Umbar. So whether it's just a quabble, whether it's a a serious thing, or a personal vendetta or whatever, typically people who have come at odds against the royal ruling houses of Gondor, and especially Minas Tirith, have came to Heret, and you wonder if the captain, based off of what he looks like, how he's presented, and you think back to that interaction where you asked about his father, you think that maybe this person is not more than a generation into a Umbar residency.
Mm. I have to imagine a Gondorian population in exile in Umbar is not warm, fuzzy towards Gondor.
Right. Yeah. Or at least certainly not towards the royal family. There's certainly there's probably in general pleasant thoughts towards land and certain ideas behind Gondor, but to the people in power, the people in charge, almost certainly not. Yeah, there's nobody in Umbar that's going to feel that way. He says, now I've been forthright, I've been practical in outlining the minimum of my terms, and I understand that there may be some odds and contention brewing already with those, but I think that it is only reasonable now for you to lay out your minimums and expectations for any treaty as a standard threshold.
Okay.
Well, we first and foremost, we want a peace treaty, a non-aggression pact between our two lands.
I don't have a problem with that. And within the context of the things, the other aspects that I've outlined.
Second, we want I think we can agree that we can have our navies curtailed. So we would like it for your corsairs to no longer sail up the Anduin to Peligir. And so maybe the proposal that could satisfy us both is that we both can sail between Selentir and Tulphalis, but we won't go south of Selentir and you won't go north of Tulphalis. Is that agreeable to you?
He says, with some small considerations, yes. I have no issue with assigning the Anduin and the bays around Tulphalis to Gondor. And in fact, I have no issues with resigning all of the Gondorian coast as it stands now, north of the Anduin, to you. I would make no claim to those lands. However, I would put an addendum, a note, a clause that, provided that we stay well west of Andrast, that Umbar may still sail to the north and treat and engage with other folk in the distant lands there, far outside the borders of Gondor and its own provenance. I understand that non-aggression and distance, high walls make for good neighbors, so to speak, between you and I. However, I don't feel that Gondor should speak for all of the north and blockading Umbar out. So,
and would you be, in the spirit of reciprocity and non-aggression and mercantile commercial interests, allow our trading ships to likewise go far south outside of the bounds of Umbar?
I have no problem with your trading ships entering the arbors of Umbar itself, provided that there is assurances and evidences that they do not bring men-at-arms with them.
So you want your corsairs to go visit the Grey Havens and visit Círdan, the shipwright?
I have no knowledge of these places that you speak, but I will say that there are inlets, bays along the western coast, people that we have traded with in recent years. Not everyone is friendly to us, certainly, much as I'm sure you have your own fair share of enemies that are not us as well.
So you need corsairs to protect your mercantile fleet.
Anything that we deal with when it comes to Gondor would be unarmed and at a distance. That is reasonable.
I think I turned to Crithiel, I turned to Garwin, and I turned to Zachariah. I said, we could agree to that, could we not?
Trade seems beneficial to all, and the trade need not be armed beyond, basic protection, such as, even we carry weapons when we came here, though we are here on a peaceful mission. So I think within reason, that makes perfect sense.
I am for it as long as it means peace.
And Zach, just as a refresher, our goal here is to get a non-aggression pact with these guys and to demilitarize the southern border. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, is it to demilitarize the southern border, or is it to gain allies against the east?
Yeah,
That's a great question, Crithiel or Andrew. I don't know if we're looking for an ally as much as just to make sure we don't have to fight too many enemies at once. But Zach, what would Ecthelion have told us?
Yeah, I think the I don't think Ecthelion had an expectation that you were going to come back to Minas Tirith with a Corsair army at the disposal of Gondor. So I think very clearly what Ecthelion told you initially was, hey, Gondor can't fight a war on two fronts. We don't have the manpower to do that. So we need to find a way of making Umbar not an immediate concern for us. And if that can happen, I mean, that's why, keep in mind, that's why Thorongil is doing what he's doing. There's a two-pronged approach, because one way or another, Gondor has to remove the Umbar as an immediate threat.
Yep.
Because Mordor is still building in this point in time, right? Barad-dûr is still under construction. All that's happening. So there is, they haven't gone to full-out war yet. So they're trying to wrap up or tie up things with Umbar ASAP.
Yep. So I would imagine in outlining that we kind of carved out this, our ships won't go south of this line, your ships won't go north of this line. We've got some hybrid territory where we'll approach each other only peacefully. We're letting trade go in both directions. And I don't necessarily think we have to get him to agree to recognizing South Gondor to achieve our goals. Our goal is non-aggression in this generation.
Perhaps he will be more willing to go further into more treaties once we have proven that we can uphold this particular treaty for a while. And once we become better allies, perhaps we can move to do more at a future time.
Andrew, go ahead. Yeah.
It's not really. I don't know that Crithiel would be the one who would bring this up, but I will, because it would seem that this is me speaking out of character. It would seem that the thing's gonna somewhat hinge on Harander. But I think when we were in the Golden City, one of the things that we had proposed that intrigued, I think, the Golden King was a three-way treaty and opening up of trade. So what I'm wondering is, and I would find some proper way probably to bring it up to the captain, is to ask regarding Harander and the lands north of Selentir. Your treaty with the Golden King has to do with you having no claim if those lands are ceded. But if those lands are, if, for example, Gondor were to reach an agreement with the Golden King to leave those lands unceded, that would not be against your wishes, as you have no claim on those lands. As you said, you have no interest in those lands. Would that be correct? Sorry, I wouldn't say no interest, but I would say that you have no. You said, because he said that he has no ambition to control those lands. Yeah. So I would say that in a way that, you yourself have no ambition, and your treaty mainly pertains to if those lands are ceded to the south, that they would not go to you, but they would go to the Golden King.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were to negotiate with the Golden King that those lands would remain Gondorian, that would not be something that is against anything of yours.
I like this. This is Zach talking. I like this. I think it's a clever read around. I mean, it's not, yeah. I think it makes practically it makes sense, right? Like he's clear with what he said. Go ahead, Andrew, as part of this. I'm gonna have you make a roll. I will let you have either a persuasion or, because this is you're sussing out a puzzle here, which is a negotiation, I will let you make a riddle check. Either one at advantage, because I think you got some good stuff here.
So riddle or what?
Riddle or persuasion.
Well, riddle is 0 and persuasions is -1. So
Riddle it is.
riddle.
Hold
It's
on.
advantage. You have a shot at making a 17, 18,
Zach's-
19, or 20.
What do you got, Zach?
I am also, I have like a 3 in riddle, it says.
Mm-hmm.
I can help out if I can help out if I can help out.
Yeah. So as Crithael is pondering this or trying to propose that this is as a possibility, how would Garwin engage at the moment to kind of lend assistance to this?
So I was gonna say, so what is Crithael saying exactly?
So
like what are you going to say that I can then potentially add on, and does that make sense? Like I want to be able to
So it essentially is, I'm asking for a clarification. I'm saying regarding, so I'm saying to the captain, I'm saying if I am to understand your treaty with the Golden King correctly, that that treaty, insofar as it has to do with the lands to the north of Selentir, is only relevant to the splitting up of those lands between yourself and the Golden King, if those lands were ceded to the south by Gondor. Whereas you yourself have not promised to either conquer those lands or grant them to the Golden King. Only that in the event that they're ceded, you would not stake a claim to them. Rather, they would belong to the Golden King. But the lands, insofar, are unceded. Thus, if Gondor were to make a treaty with the Golden King for Gondor to maintain those lands, that would not be against your treaty with the Golden King.
and I think yeah, go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, that seems fairly like a fairly straightforward question, first of all, and maybe that's just because you're explaining it to me. But go ahead, Zach. Go ahead, Zach.
So I think the note that I would give there is, I think it is a straightforward question. There is an implied acknowledgement here, though, right? Which is that you're asking him to remove a term from his side of things. So whether or not you're making sense, you're absolutely, there's a sense that can be gleaned from this, but you're still saying remove from the contract this idea that Gondor is verbally ceding South Gondor or abandoning it, right? That language is still being asked to be removed, even if it makes sense why it would be removed. You're asking them to give up a win, so to speak.
So potentially, like maybe adding a keep it the same as it is, but making sure that the verbiage is if Gondor ever ceded this land, it would be up to Gondor who it goes to, rather than going straight to the Golden King. Perhaps it would be divvied up a little bit more evenly. That's if that were to ever happen. Does that make sense?
It does. But you guys having this conversation makes me raise the question we should pose to the captain, which is, what is Umbar's stance towards Selentir? Because you guys remember that Lord Minadril II from Pelargir told us that Selentir was led by Lord Dusad, who was of Numenorean descent and was a rival for the throne of Umbar. And the reason I'm bringing this up is Selentir is in Harandor and is theoretically Gondorian land, obviously in dispute and in terms of like a possessions 9/10 of the law, not ours, but it's it could be a very interesting dynamic in that I think it's a thorn in the side to Umbar.
Yeah, so let's do this. As you guys, I think as all of you are kind of collaborating there, what I'm going to do is, cause I want to take into effect consideration some of Zach's ideas, and I think even Ulysses' stuff there. Andrew, I'm going to let you roll that riddle check, but I'm going to let you have the +3 from Mr. Francis.
Okay.
So you have advantage, and you have +3 from his proficiency.
Roll, baby.
I'm gonna roll with a +0, and then we'll see what happens.
Yep.
We'll add the 3 manually. That's a crit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Oh.
So I think the captain nods in thought for a moment. He says, provided that you have a agreed upon treaty ready for the steward and the Golden King's marks, I see no reason why you couldn't remove that from our agreement. Again, Umbar is not interested within the confines of this treaty, is not interested in the lands south of the Anduin. And then, as if acknowledging Silmarion's note, he'll say, and as for Selentir, Dusad is a caged, or perhaps more clearly put, or more directly put, a leashed wolf. And Umbar holds the leash. If this treaty was to be found, and Umbar was to embrace terms with Gondor that we felt reasonable, I can envision a world where that wolf is not only leashed, but muzzled and perhaps put down. That's what you get for your 20.
I love it.
Puppy.
Brian, you had a note for a grenade earlier.
Yeah, is it time for Zechariah to speak up here?
No, things are going well.
I know, they're going surprisingly well. Zechariah is going to speak up anyways, because he's Zechariah.
Of course he is.
And he, for his few years and his many book smarts, he feels like everyone, it's like that college kid who learns a bit of geography and history and suddenly knows how the world should work and why isn't anybody listening to him, sort of thing. So Zechariah is just going to say 2 words right off the bat, which is, who cares? You guys are hammering out this whole non-aggression and all of that, and he's just going to look up at all 4 of you, and he's going to say,
but really, who cares? We've been past Harundin. It's a shithole. It's desert. It's dry. There's hardly anyone there. There's a dirt path called a road that no one goes on much because of the brigands. The people of Harmondon, for all of our bluster over who controls what, the people of Harmondon don't have any ruler and any clue that anyone should be over them because no one frankly cares. Abrakan cares about who is in leadership all the way down there, but that's far enough from Gondor that Gondor doesn't care. Gondor calls this South Gondor, but no Gondorian has set foot in it under the license of the steward in decades until us. What matters is to the east. The rising threat of Mordor is a threat to all of us, and we can agree to non-aggression, and that's great. And we can agree to trade, and that's great. And we can we can strengthen trade. We can have good relations, and that's great. But at the end, it's two words: who cares? Because we have a threat, an existential threat to Minas Tirith coming through, minus Morgul to the north. We've got a threat to Osgiliath. We've got a threat to Harmondon, and we've got a threat directly to Umbar and Abrakan from the east. We all need to work together, and we need to do something quickly. Coming all this way, and believe me, I don't like coming all this way. I'm dirty. I'm sweaty. I haven't taken a bath, and I, quite frankly, don't want to be here. But having come all this way so that we can say, hey, let's not be enemies, seems a waste of time, if I can be frank, because it's just us. What we ought to do is we ought to join our forces. We ought to take your amazing corsairs, and we should go to Abrakan, and we should get their amazing elephants, and we should get some men of Gondor, and we should march on this rising threat. We should build fortresses along the edge of Mordor. We should fortify the passes. That's what we should do, and we can do that. I can call, and I can have a force of Gondor that can meet and ride through your fair city to the banners and trumpets of your people. We can march our combined forces past Abrakan and recruit them, and we can continue marching east, and we can lay waste to this threat right now. Or we can have better trade, and we can argue over who gets the desert wastes and boring nothingness that is South Gondor or Rondon or whatever name we choose to call it. So I'd rather actually do something, and I think that you should as well.
That's well said. Give me, Brian, as you're making this case, give me a persuasion check.
We also have not shenanigans, but we do have modifiers and things like that. I don't know what we've used in terms of our long and short rest. Since
we have three fellowship points left.
Okay, I know we've got advantage on persuasion from one of our, using a fellowship point. We can just do that at advantage. And then I also have that that ability that we used in Abrakan, explaining the threat to them. And it was a craft. It was me using one of my craft points.
Speechcraft.
So I had speechcraft, and I believe that was either persuasion or fear. And I used it somewhat creatively, and I don't want to use the same toy twice of using it as fear. if you guys.
Go for it.
So yeah, wow, that's there.
When rolls don't match what your effort was.
Well, I mean, effort doesn't mean result.
What's your modifiers on that?
There's a correlation there between effort and result. That I have +3 persuasion, and it says here I do have advantage once per short rest. So I do have advantage, but at what point, how do you do double advantage?
So the note here is that with Ecthelion, which is what you're using here, so if you had advantage, and I'm not trying to milk it here, but definitely trying to make sure that you get what you deserve. It says White City's Blessing. You can spend a fellowship point to roll an additional d20 after a charisma roll has been made, but before the outcome is determined, and choose which one of the d20s is used. So if you use...
So don't tell me whether that natural 3 was a success or not. So that would be my roll once per short rest. I get advantage. So then we use the fellowship point to add another d20, which will hopefully be higher than a 3. So let's see here. There we go. That's the one I was looking for.
Wow.
Thank you, Ecthelion.
Yeah. Sometimes having a patron is a good thing. Yeah, I mean 2 crits in a row, result-wise speaking. So there isn't. So here's what you get for your success. First off, it isn't hand waved away, like 100% not.
Yeah.
Your proposal, and the captain seems like he sits there for a while, like an uncomfortably long amount of minutes, as if pondering, and then he finally says, I also do not enjoy sitting idle. My young companion. The threat to the east is not unknown to me, certainly, though there are quite a number more leagues between myself and that threat, and you and that threat. He says, I do not know the full extent of that menace, that power that is rising. Whether it be something that you and I and our golden friend could stand against, or whether it would overwhelm all of us. I don't know the answer. What I do know, and I say this to you in confidence, knowing that it will not get outside these walls, or there will be a swift justice. I do know that riders from that power, liaisons, have visited my city. And I do know that they proposed a treaty not unlike your own. And to show you that I take peace, non-aggression, and the safety of my city seriously, I will tell you that we have signed an understanding between us and the sorcerer, and I do not expect him to hold to that treaty in perpetuity. I do feel confident that we will not be the first targets to suffer his wrath. So, when you propose marching, I say perhaps. I say I am not against that. I say I don't want another threat looming just over one ally's shoulder. I would much prefer that land remain desolate. So, what I say for now is, unless Gondor has a wealth of information that you have yet to share, I say that we need to have a better understanding of that individual and what he currently possesses before we choose to march anywhere.
Fair enough.
So, Brian, to your benefit, 100% it's a success as a meta outside statement. 100% it is a success towards getting a treaty signed as far as the mechanics here, right? We're still actually playing through the mechanics of a council. I just kind of made them more underlying in this one as opposed to front and center. But certainly your success, that I think the note there is, he was 100% not going to tell you. I promise you, he was not going to tell you that he had an agreement with the sorcerer. But because of your success and your and all that, you now know that. But also, he's not saying go pound sand. He's saying I have an alliance with them, but I also know it's probably not permanent.
Which, Captain, thank you for your candor. But everything you've told us and everything we've experienced on our long journey from Peligrir to Harmondon to Abercon to here tells us that there are shifting sands everywhere. We have an opportunity in a land and a world that's been dominated by war and attack and counterattack. We have an opportunity to create something that might be better, that might allow humans who share a common history, who share a common ancestry, to try to live in peace for a while and see how it feels and see how it goes. And by both having peace at each other's border, be able to be vigilant in other directions and invest in meaningful things that aren't about vying with each other.
As you're saying this, Zach, Mr. Francis, one of the things to keep in mind. So I noted, I think, that in Abrakan, that you had to have 3 successes before you got any failures, right? And I said that this would be more difficult. So you got 2 successes here in your negotiations, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that for this negotiation to have any level of success, all 4 of you have to get a success without failure. Now, that's not to say that there isn't, like you got a second chance at Abercon, there might be other opportunities, but I'm saying in order for you guys to get a win here, Ulysses and Zach will make a roll at some point that is kind of in the vein of this negotiation. So just kind of keep that in mind in the next bit here, and if you see an opportunity to jump in and throw your dice, you let me know. I think it would be at this point that he would, as he kind of gets the sense. I mean, you're halfway there. I think he's taking it more. You get the sense that he's taking it more seriously now than what he maybe was at the beginning, or with more practiced consideration. He says, "There's another element to all this that is more of a personal matter, but that I." I would see settled as part of any agreement between Gondor and Umbar. Consider it more of a side measure, but one that, if this is to move forward, will need to be resolved nonetheless. He said, I have my duties here, maintaining the city, and I will undoubtedly remain here until my last days. However, I have two sons who deserve more than what Umbar can offer, and that I would see back in Gondor, given opportunities among Northmen. As a personal consideration, I am asking that my progeny, be awarded some degree of minor house or lordship in the realms of Gondor proper.
If your progeny is a prodigy, then it shouldn't be a problem.
I would consider it. I would consider them notable.
You are asking us to bring your two children back with us to Gondor and have the steward confer upon them minor nobility and allow them to live and pursue careers within the kingdom.
They have the birthright for it, and it isn't a matter of
done.
To make things easier, do you have any historical claims that perhaps could be returned upon you in Gondor?
Yes. Now we circle back around to where we started at the beginning, and I feel much more inclined. He says, "Might I see your whatever book you're referencing there, Min and such?"
Yeah. Do I have the book or do I have notes on the book? I don't remember.
You have your big tome, but you also have the scrolls from
the wizard.
From the wizard, yeah.
Oh gosh, this guy is not wanting to stay happy.
You're good.
So I mean, I fumble through the different books, and I basically most of my encumbrance is taken up by books. So I have been hauling around history of Gondor that is about a third of the book is genealogies and houses and things like that. And so I would have records of any major or minor house of nobility over the last few centuries. Plus then lists of folks in Umbar that would have lineage there. I just don't know his identity and whether that lines up with any of those.
Yeah, exactly. And so he would tell you as you kind of like pull out your books of lineages and whatnot, that his house name, and he would draw you to the name of his father, which he says is Gimilzor. And he would rattle off a couple other names. He doesn't give you his name. And again, there's this. You don't know if that's for exactly what reason, except that he seems loath to call himself anything other than Captain. But he gives you the name Gimilzor, son of so and so, son of so and so, son of so and so, and you, because you have the book as your special item, and all
Yeah, I
that.
say die trader and I stab it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. You know exactly. You're able to reference without making a roll that this guy, the lineage that he is claiming, is a real lineage, and you can see that you don't have entry. If you want, I guess you could make a roll in this case, but because your book would probably give lineages and with brief, like relative notes, but Gimmelzor, like the lineage seems to end there. At least there's no record in your book of Gimmelzor having children or anything like that. But if you wanted to know more about Gimmelzor and his house, you're welcome to make a roll.
I mean, I'm. It doesn't necessarily save any good dice to not make a roll. But my assumption is that with the trouble that we have on different borders and the fact that we are at war frequently enough, there would probably be enough male nobles lost in battle and enough dying houses that even if we couldn't even if there was some traitors and treachery involved, and even if we couldn't repatriate whatever his historical lands and house were, there should be some sort of title that could be easily conferred, enough that whatever dirt I find could probably be given a wink and a nod, and not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So I would even go so far as to look it up myself, and I'll go ahead and do the roll. But if there's anything problematic, I wouldn't necessarily say. I wouldn't necessarily say it out loud. So I'll do that, and this would be would this be old lore?
Old lore, yeah.
Old lore, yeah. So that's
19. Yeah. So this might help a little bit here with a couple of things. So, Ilzor, it had land on the Anduin in kind of the I'll ping it on the thing, but in like eastern Lebanon, kind of where Lebanon reaches up against and hits up against the Arduin, and right across the river would be South Ecthelion. What you would be able to roll with a 19, the benefit that you get there is that 100%. So Ecthelion the second, you have you gather an understanding that this Gimmelzor fell out of favor, not with Ecthelion. In fact, you would guess that this guy that you're talking to is probably about the same age as Ecthelion. But his father fell out of favor of the captain of the guard of Minas Tirith, and was in fact part of that like Guardians of the Citadel guard soldiers, like a high-ranking soldier in Gondor. Gimmelzor was, and it seems to be you don't get a heavy amount of detail, but you seem to be that there was a conflict between the captain of the guard of Minas Tirith and Gimmelzor, a personal conflict that ended with swords being drawn, though no full bloodshed. However, it's quickly noted thereafter that there was a promise of bloodshed that ended up resulting in within a year's time, Gimmelzor abandoning his lands and disappearing to the south.
I see no reason why. Most people wouldn't know about that history, and I personally see no reason why we couldn't keep that under wraps, and we could probably cede land down that way and title back to him. So if we cede that to him, then that would make us the Cedars of Lebanon. So
good job.
I try.
Job. Yeah, Zach is clutching his temples.
I'm just thinking about the flag. The cedars on the flag for Lebanon.
Well, yeah, Ulysses. It's a biblical reference to the cedars of Lebanon were renowned, and the temple and okay. Just I didn't know your religious background, but so Lebanon even to this day has the cedars on the on the background.
Good job. So I think it sounds like you guys are in agreement there. That seems like an easy take. So what I'm going to say there is, because you guys acknowledged that and made it easy, the next roll, whoever wants to propose or move the step forward, the next roll is going to have advantage. So that needs to be Ulysses or Zach figuring out what they want to put.
Zach Francis, I'm going to give you the floor to take advantage of the advantage.
Okay. I'm trying to think. I mean, everything's going well so far, so I'm not exactly sure what I need to roll on at the moment.
Yeah. So Zach, that's a good question. So let's talk about that for real quick here. And by the way, we're gonna, I think, play for another half hour ish, and then we'll probably pull the ripcord for tonight. And if we wrap up you guys' rolls a little bit faster, we may call that earlier. But I'm keeping an eye on time here. So I think, Zach, there's a couple of things that are still in the midst of this debate or this discussion, right? And one as a ranger that you might want to keep note of, right? Because you're kind of on the outskirts, on the borders of Gondor, right? And you're kind of the patrol and the watch, right? And so there's a couple of things that have been discussed, but that you maybe Zach / Garwin wants more clarity on here. One of them being their statement was south of Anduin, right? Is basically on the table, and I think your statement or your negotiations has kind of said, well,
Ecthelion.
It's not really. We're going to deal with that elsewhere, right? But there's still that kind of leaves Ecthelion in a gray area, right? Where maybe it's going to be negotiated elsewhere. It would be. I could see a world where Garwin would want to suggest that while certain points passed, but Ecthelion and Pelargi both are bastions and renowned places of Gondor at the moment, and so an acknowledgement that they should remain undisputed in the possession of Gondor by Umbar as part of this might be worthwhile to you to ask. In addition, I think there's probably some questions about Solentir that could be addressed more clearly, because they haven't really gotten into that other than to kind of offer it up as the sacrificial lamb.
So I would
I'll throw out one more. Sorry, the other thing that needs some clarification is, they're not interested in taking military action on Mordor,
right?
Unless they have more information.
Well, that's kind of
scouting and information might be your thing.
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking maybe that would be a good angle to take. Like, hey, south of Anduin, 100%. That's great. Minus those two particular cities, since they would be the path from Mordor basically to where you are. And if you're not ready necessarily to help us defend until we know more, perhaps those particular bastions and cities remain in our control, even though they are technically south of Anduin. They remain in our control, and instead of them going into that south of Anduin part of the treaty, they will remain part of Gondor. However, once we have more information and you are ready to move, you are more than welcome to come to those places and help us as guests and as allies secure those areas, to not only help secure Gondor, but to also help secure Umbar and the lands south of the Anduin.
So what I am to understand, Ranger, is that Gondor wishes to carve out the forests of Ecthelion and the city of Pelargir as firmly within its borders, and wishes to gain a recognition from Umbar that those lands are to remain uncontested property of the North. However, you are offering that we might march through them should we ally with you in future engagements.
There's no reason why allies shouldn't be able to pass through and visit places of other allies.
Give me a check here, Zach. I mean, obviously, persuasion's going to make sense a lot of times, but if you see another skill that you're like, hey, what about this? That might work. I'm willing to entertain.
I kind of... I don't know if this works, but I'm thinking maybe a... I'm thinking maybe a... Instead of a persuasion, is there any way to maybe do it as a... I'm trying to figure out how I would... Because part of me wants it to be like, it makes the most sense. We're the ones closest. We could handle that, and but it's not really intimidation. If that makes... It's not intimidation. I don't think that works.
Yeah, I don't think with how you...
It's not that intimidation as in like I'm intimidating. It's an intimidation because it's like, hey, if you guys took over this place, you're going to have zero information about what's happening. We're already there and settled.
Yeah.
I mean, what about, I mean, perception potentially? Like, no, it doesn't really fit either. I can't think of anything else that really fits for this. Maybe insight or like a history, since we've been there forever. Like we have a history there, and maybe that'll... But that doesn't really... I mean, none of these things that I'm looking at really fit, other than potentially performance or persuasion.
I would, based off of what you just said, I would probably let it's stretching the boundaries of it. But if you have travel, which is a wisdom skill,
I have travel.
Since you're discussing the means of moving armies and things of that nature, I would allow travel.
Yeah. Because we know the lands, and we would help you through.
Yeah.
If you ever came through, like, it makes more sense, especially with these being the literal path between Mordor and the south end here. Like, it makes more sense for us to still hold that land to make sure that everything's there. So let's do travel.
Okay. Travel with advantage. You need a 15 or better.
Was that both of them already?
I don't know how your dice work.
I just clicked on it once, and it didn't give me any options to change anything.
Click on it again. No. Okay. So do you have any way of modifying that?
I have strength of will, add +2 to charisma saves. That doesn't help me. Speechcraft. I have.
Speechcraft could help.
Tireless and swift, +4 to saving throws against fatigue. That does not help me. Let me click on Speechcraft. Why is it not letting me do this? Okay,
So speechcraft. I think what we have let this do in the past. So it's typically about making contested rolls. So what we have done in the past is allowed you to turn a check like this into a contested roll with the hope that they would roll less than a 15 and give you an opportunity. Right. It's kind of matching wits, matching words with the individual. And I have an idea. If you're fine with using speechcraft, putting your 11 up against this guy, I'm willing to do that because I have an idea of how that could be handled.
Should I do that, guys, or should I use a fellowship point?
What fellowship point that we use is for charisma based rolls, so it's not going to apply to travel. I think you should go for contested because.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. So let me get this dice up here.
If it helps, I'll even teach one of your I can teach any of your kids if they want to, how to travel through and hunt and track and anything that may that they may want to learn.
All right. Let's see.
I'll throw that in for extra measure.
You throw in a bonus. Okay. Let's see here.
I'm your friend.
That's right. So the nice thing about this, well, let's roll this first. No. He rolled very well.
Dang it.
So.
Well, frick, y'all. I'm sorry.
So here's the great thing. You have
it's not you, Zach.
Well, it's not you. If you really wanted to, now you have unlocked another thing, right? Because the Awe of the Gleaming Throne, which is your patron ability from the Golden King, says when you're in a hex that contains a city, which you are, you can spend a fellowship point to force a creature you can see to re-roll a d20 test, which this is. So if you really wanted to, you could spend a fellowship point to try to force him to re-roll that again.
Is that smart?
Yeah. Hold on. I have to say, I'm sorry to be the assistant DM. But Andrew B. sacrificed that so we could get the banner. Because in that encounter to get the banner, we failed.
That's right.
And then Andrew said, if we spurn that boon,
that's true.
we succeed.
That's true.
So the reroll.
So really, this is no longer your failing, Zach. This is Andrew's failing, I think, is what.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel better then.
It's not Andrew's failing. It's Andrew's creativity that got us a benefit in the past that no longer we used the resource.
Yeah.
It got something.
So here's what's gonna happen here. You're gonna have a setback. So he's gonna say so Gondor wants to claw back part of to extend their hand past the Anduin. That seems like something I should have expected. Pelargir is too fine a city to just be left on the table. He says, if you're going to lay claim and carve out Pelargir and South Ecthelion, then Umbar should be able to lay claim to the stronghold of Salentir and the land surrounding it. Officially.
That transgresses what Ecthelion instructed us on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, you might not. I mean, Salentir isn't like a gleaming jewel, and Desaad doesn't seem like a great guy to hang out with. But definitely it transgresses, like you say. He says, certainly you can understand and we can agree that Salentir is no Pelargir. You are certainly getting the better city out of this agreement. And the better land. As you said, you're claiming the forests of Ecthelion, and how did you put it? And he turns to Zechariah.
Shithole.
He says, yes, we are claiming a shithole of a desert.
It's fine by me again, shithole. But
You're transgressing Ecthelion's commands.
Ecthelion and his pride over that shithole desert is enough to ruin relations and sink this whole deal that we have, quite frankly, walked far too long to establish.
I don't think Harmondon should be left in the lurch like that. I think those people are caught in crossfire and could benefit from reacquainting with Gondorian jurisdiction.
I'll remind you that we went there and they didn't seem to know how to find Gondor on a map. And they didn't seem to notice that Gondor hadn't exerted any influence over them in 50 years, and they seemed to be doing quite well without us. Just in the interest, I turn to our host and say, just in the interest of transparency, they didn't care that Gondor existed, and no one in Gondor could name off Harmondon without a textbook in front of them.
Perhaps in your agreements with the Golden King, you can carve out Harmondon as a bastion of Gondor if you want. Or he turns to Zechariah and he says, or perhaps that's an area that you can cede to them. Or perhaps that they're an independent nation. I have no interest in Harmondon. We would not carve out so much of Harondor as to lay claim to Harmondon with this agreement.
So, in the SALT negotiations between the Soviet Union and the United States, the Soviets referred to Bob Strauss, who was an attorney for Macon Gump, as the Dark Knight of the negotiations, or maybe the Black Knight. They knew when Bob Strauss came in the room, it was hardball time. And I'm just going to say that soft pansy Zachariah, who's a little homesick and wishy-washy on executing the mission we're on, he's going to be the white knight of the negotiation, but Samarian's going to be the black knight of this negotiation. And I'm going to ask you if you would allow me to use a virtue I have called royalty remembered. Royalty remembered, it's more of a combat thing where you get advantage on attack rolls and intimidation checks. You're immune to being frightened, and you get 10 hit points. But the way I want to use it in this situation is I want to focus on that intimidation check, because we haven't tried intimidation, and the idea that there's immunity to being frightened means that, like, Samarian's kind of got her dander up. She's kind of she's as august and proud and as she can be, and she wants to remind the captain of the Havens that what's at stake. And I actually want to use royalty remembered in part to remind him that he's the one that wants us to take his sons back to Gondor. I want him to remember there's something pristine and pure about Gondor that is worth saving and sacrificing for and being part of.
All right, go for it. And I think that's a reasonable roll. As you're doing that, Zach, the outcome of this roll could play into to your discussion as well. So we'll find out here.
So you just want me to go straight to the roll?
Yeah, let's. No. I think you kind of communicated it well, so I think we're good here.
All right, so I have advantage on this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I am not trained in intimidation, so I was not going for my strong suit here.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to roll one roll and then the second roll for advantage.
Okay.
So that's a 9. That's not good. And that's an 11. And that's not good. And I'm going to use a fellowship point because it's a charisma roll to re-roll it. Okay.
Sounds good.
And that's not good either. And so,
yeah, I think unfortunately, since we can't blame, since you said we can't blame Andrew, we're back to blaming Zach for getting us down this path.
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember the part in remember the part in Lord of the Rings where Sauron gets a bunch of power and he goes to war against the people of Middle Earth and destroys Osgiliath and marches on everyone and the Shire. And anyway, I'm just saying that's all your fault, Silmarian.
All of the events of the Third Age could have been avoided if you guys had done your job in Umbar. No.
You mean the last age?
Yeah. I think.
just to be fair, even if I went with persuasion, where I have a +7, none of those rolls would have worked.
Yeah. Bunch of nonsense there. So I think what we're gonna do here is, we'll say like there's discussion. The discussion continues for some time. Things are kind of proposed back and forth, and you keep reaching this headway or this headwind, which is if Umbar is declared a kingdom, and there's basically a no-fly zone for warships between point A and point B, or which I think you guys are in agreement on there, and if his sons are ceded a domain in Lebanon, like all of those seem to be things that are reasoned, and those are pretty easy to check off the list, arguably. But where you can't seem to find common ground is any discussion that takes place south of the Anduin, which is Ecthelion, Pelargir, anything. As soon as you start bringing up locking that in as something that Umbar will basically acknowledge is part of Gondor and isn't part because what you're trying to do, I think, and you guys can decide if you really want to tie on this hill, I guess. But what you're trying to do is make it so that you could go to the Golden King and say, Umbar is agreed to this territory being what's in the discussion, but not this territory. Umbar is saying Pelargir and Ecthelion are not on the table, that they are ours, and they're backing us up on that. As soon as you start bringing that into the discussion, he immediately wants to claim Salentir and a chunk of the coastal region around Salentir. And he is unwilling to grant you your land without claiming something of his own. And that really just becomes this point of the sticking point for the whole thing. And it no matter how well you seem to be getting along in every other area, that seems to be the point where you can't quite connect the dots. So I will ask you, I know we just got a few minutes here, but I'll ask you guys, as we're drawing close to a close, is this a sticking point to where you're going to say, you know what, we've discussed this for several hours, we're not going to find a resolution here. If this is the way it is, then we're not going to reach an arrangement, or are you willing to pivot here?
Everybody knows my answer.
Yeah.
And that's been my answer, as you guys probably know from, I think I messaged Ulysses somewhere between session 1 and session 2.
Yeah.
I don't think that I would feel like I have any way to make that particular decision. I don't think Garwin would necessarily care if they took that other city. I think he would be fine with that. I think it is more important to him to have the other two that are closest to Mordor to still be protected by Gondor, who has armies and things like that to help protect it. That which is the sole reason why he thinks that those two particular places should be still under Gondor's jurisdiction, just because it's it's closest to Mordor. Like if we give it to Umbar, they're not going to go over there. They're just going to send some people to hang out, and it's not going to protect anything. So, but I don't think he would feel that he has the authorization to make any such decision. But he will not necessarily go against what the group says at this point.
I'll just point out we've got a ticking time bomb, which is that we've got a fleet of ships that is going to show up in, a week? And they're going to show up and say, hey, do we need to use force on these guys? And everything's going to come crashing down if we wait till that. But if we can get this mutual alliance going from to march on Mordor, then I just called the ships and they came and are giving us a hand. They rerouted and So yeah,
Hey,
I feel like
Jack.
that's the taking time bomb. We need them to if we want to make a friendly alliance, then they're going to screw that up. And if we want to make a friendly non-aggression pact, they're going to screw that up very shortly. And if we want to make an alliance, then they're going to be there in force, ready to help us out with it. So let's go for the alliance, even if we give up the Shithole Desert.
Well, we're giving up Celantir, and I want to ask Zach.
We don't own Celantir. Who cares about Celantir? They don't know we exist. They don't exist, but we don't control Celantir. Who cares if we?
No. But hear me out, Zach. I have a question for you. If we agree in a treaty with Umbar that Celantir is theirs, will that piss Celantir off and make them a more pronounced adversary of Gondor? And being that they're closer to us, do we create a little bit of a hornet that could mess with us on our southern flank?
Yeah. So, I think without rolling, I'll just go ahead and tell you that it is pretty. Even though Desaad seems to be a lieutenant that has greater motivations, I will say it that way. It has been pretty clear to Gondor up to this point that Celantir is controlled by Umbar, by the Corsairs. So if the captain says he can deal with Celantir, or yada 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 yada, or he can deal with Desaad, you would expect that to arguably be true. You think that Celantir is certainly not like.
Okay. Hold on. I want to ask the captain a question.
Sure.
Captain, just since we're out of loggerheads, I want to clarify something. Earlier, you said to us that you had made a treaty with the Golden King. And in that treaty with the Golden King, you gave him and his people all of Harondor. Did you, in that treaty, carve out Celantir, or did you give it to the Golden King?
I probably would have you roll if it was, but we're close enough to time. I'll just let you get this one. He says, Celantir is to remain in Umbar control up until the point until the White City falls. That is to be our new Celantir, according to the current treaty. So, Celantir is ours until Gondor is in our possession.
Here I have an idea. I have a way that perhaps both things can be accomplished. That Celantir may remain somewhat. Well, here's a thought. Something. God, I never thought I would propose. Propose being apt word. We have pledged to, if this treaty goes through, to that Gondor would grant your sons nobility in Gondor proper. what if, as part of that title, perhaps sometime down the road, perhaps in 10 years or sooner, or whatever is, appropriate, Selentir would be given to govern to one of your sons, but in the name of Gondor?
Ooh.
I think that is a very interesting proposal. This is Zach saying that. That I think is another opportunity for a role to like that. That is a very good proposal. Go ahead and give me a check with advantage. Persuasion with advantage, Andrew. I know it's not great, but you get advantage.
I don't know if I can make two on the same day.
Yes, you can. No, you can't.
No.
He says so what he will say is so you still offer the proposal and it's still interesting. It's just that so what he says is one of my sons shall have Selentir and the other our old kingdom in Lebanon.
That's a better option than the other thing, as long as it's in, as long as it's under Gondorian nobility.
He says,
I'm not saying that to him, by the way. I'm saying.
Yeah. He says, we would have to word the treaty carefully if this is to be our agreement, such that in the eyes of Umbar, this is still a win to the general people. I would rely upon you, leave it to you to propose that wording, but it would need to be such that while Selentir would remain under Gondor's influence in the coming years, the people of Umbar see it as one of their own, taking possession and holding it.
Perhaps a way to secure that alliance, and again, it's very apt that Crethale would be the one who proposes. Perhaps it would perhaps a better way to secure that particular aim is to also have some sort of pact of marriage between your son, who would be granted nobility, and a Gondorian noble, an existing Gondorian noble family, so that it would show an intertwining of ties between Gondor and Umbar.
He says, I think that's best. And what's more, he says, another consideration. He says,
yeah, and that is why we brought Silmarion.
Silmarion brought wine. We brought Silmarion.
Yes.
Both of them are good for negotiations.
No, that was not at all.
I think he's definitely open to this, which I think, like, it's going to take some tricky maneuvering, but if you're willing to give his sons basically in Gondorian's records, his kindred would own or would possess both Selentir and a portion of Lebanon. He's up for this. You'll just have to do some wordsmithing. I think with that, you guys have basically locked in your third success. You'll need one more. We're not going to do the one tonight. But I think there's a couple of stickler points, and I think one that he'll drop in here is he says, I see a path forward, an answer that secures at least a treaty, in theory, between my people and yours. But there are some hazards that lay between here and there. For if you reach an agreement with me, myself, there's others that still yet to that are yet to sign and yet to come to reach the same consensus. He says, you must find your own treaty with the Golden King, and what's more, you must confirm your treaty with your steward. Both of which will have their own thoughts, I believe, into all of this back and forth negotiation. He says, that will take some time. Certainly the journey, if not the discussion. He says, I had in my mind, when I opened my gates to you this morning, that it was unlikely that any of you would ever exit this city again. And you would remain here as corpses or as guests for the rest of your days. If we reach this treaty, that need not be the case. However, I will have an expectation that one of you, if not more, are to remain in my city, under my care, until all resolutions have been made, all parties are in agreement, and all marks have been made. He says, and by your own note, he said, I would say that at minimum, and he motions with his hand to Crithiel, and he says that this one at least remains, as she seems to have claim to some status in Gondor, and would be of value to the nobility there. Less so the ranger. I'm not so sure about the scholar, but this one, you'll remain.
If that is what is decided, I shall do my duty and remain here to secure this treaty.
So, if Crithiel kind of gives that as a hypothetical yes, with that, we're gonna wrap up for the evening. So, what does that mean? It means that next session, you guys have one more success that you need to do. You have managed to only kind of sort of let loose of Salentir, which is great. You've managed to thread some needles there. You may be able, the treaty is still on the table, but you need that one success and you're running out of options for sure. So the next section will be our last. So there will be a final aspect to this council, and then one way or another, a series of events will take place afterwards, and consequences or rewards for your labor here. So just be thinking about how you can get another success out of here. And
I'm just going to simply say this: in the course of this campaign, I got a keen, great spear that I've yet to use in combat. And I am very inclined that is the path by which it will go. So I hope we get to push the 5e Lord of the Rings to the combat max next year with swashbuckler panache.
I will say, without saying that this is guaranteed, I have built two completely different encounter maps for next session. So not saying that we have to use either one, but I have heard you, I have seen the longing in your eyes, and preparations have been made, but we'll see. You guys are doing a good job. I think. I mean, legitimately, Brian and Andrew, your roles there at the beginning, kind of really put this on. Like I was legitimately like, there's no way that they're going to be successful here. It's such a hard row to hoe. And then you got 2 successes right out the gate, which kind of unlocked some other pieces of the negotiation, which saved you from the failures a little bit. But we'll see if you can continue it further. But I was really impressed by the ideas and the conversation early on.
I am still packing my inspiration.
What'd you say, Brian?
It turned out pretty cool. Yeah, it was kind of fun getting to. I mean, I'd been holding on to that grenade for since the beginning. I mean, I just the fact that he realized that he didn't care about anything other than solving the problems rather than just worrying about old grudges over who had what land. So I've been sitting on that for ages, and you guys knew it. Yeah, he just spoke up, and there it is. See how it goes.
Yeah.
We'll see where that. But, yeah, we definitely.
I thought the Floridas had very, very creative and very different approaches. It actually really opened up the negotiation. A lot of councils are very coordinated, and you're trying to kind of go from the same hymn book. This one, the 4 of us went on very different paths.
And I'll say I didn't draw attention to him heavily during it because I was pretty focused on you guys. But I'll say that I appreciated. We had a couple people in chat, Craig and Andrew, offering running commentary for this discussion, and I really enjoyed it. So
who they like, me or the others?
Yeah, I was looking through here real quick. Yeah, they were enjoying.
To shut up.
They were enjoying the parlaying that Ulysses was doing. Then they were talking about it getting really dense there for a while, which I think was a good thing based off what they were saying. Then there's notes about. Is there really a threat from the east? Question mark. Shadows, as Craig says, shadows are no real threat. The swords of Gondor are the real threat. So I think there was maybe some cheering for Umbar to hold fast to their independence here.
Can we just pause for a moment and recognize these guys signed a treaty with the Golden King that completely envisions conquering Gondor. Okay, they're scumbags. I'm sorry to use that stronger language.
No. They're good people. It's not like they signed a treaty with Sauron. Oh wait, they also did that.
Yeah, I really thought. I'll be honest. I think Brian had to get out of here. Oh, nope, he's back. But I think the thing for me, and we can get out of here whenever you guys need to. But one of the things for me, I really felt like, as much as it came from the critical success that Brian rolled, I really felt like the note of, hey, they've signed a contract with Sauron would be a huge red problem for all of you. Like I really felt like that was going to be where negotiations ended when you found out, like, oh, you made a deal with the enemy. We're not dealing. But you guys actually were kind of just maneuvered through that pretty good, and I enjoyed seeing you guys being.
I felt like you didn't really trust them, and it was expediency, and the fact that he brought it up felt like it was more above board. And it was just we had something, a non-aggression expedient, but I didn't like it. I don't expect they'll go for it for long. I felt like it was trustworthy enough.
Right.
These guys are like, you get a treaty, and you get a treaty, and you get a treaty.
Yeah, keep in mind, right? Like, and I love Craig. Craig's Craig's got the best comments. Craig's like 5e version of Sauron is probably pretty trustworthy. No, to me, I think the thing that I keep in mind, and it's been kind of fun as a game master to be able to think about some of the people who are down here in the South that we really don't get to know that well in the stories that we typically get. But one of the things I'm thinking about with Umbar is like, and especially with these Numenorians or these Gondorians who are here in Umbar, right, is that literally they have their backs to the sea, right? They don't have a strong, like these guys. Harad has a ton of land. They have a huge empire, an empire way bigger than in size than Gondor, right? Like Harad's killing it. The Gondorians and Numenorians of Umbar are not killing it. They have a city and some surrounding territory, but not and a pretty nice fleet. But pretty much that fleet is kind of given to them under the good graces of Harad. So they must wheel and deal if they're going to survive. Because the minute Harad and the Golden King says, screw you guys, I mean, if Harad turns on Umbar, there's no haven for Gondorian, ne'er-do-wells anymore. And so, to me, it's a very interesting idea that, like, it's a tricky world that these guys live in.
Also, I will just say this: his whole introduction of getting his sons back to Gondor and getting noble titles is clearly a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
Yes. But thankfully not in Middle Earth. So, and really, like, I had that in my back pocket. I'm like, I'm only gonna bring it up, and then like pretty much immediately when he got your feathers all in a ruff, Ulysses, early on, and you were talking about the claim to nobility.
I'm gonna sneak out.
Hey, get out of here, Brian. No problem.
I got a delivery early in the morning, and I gotta get this guy to bed.
Get out of here, Brian. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Yep.
And I was gonna say I also have to get up early for work, so I'm also gonna probably head out.
Zach, thanks for playing. We'll see you later. Yeah. When you started bringing up your heritage and your nobility and your line, where you come from and your standing, I'm like, oh, that's coming out of the back pocket and going into the front pocket because you've made a case that lineage is important, and so he realized that he had an audience that might be sympathetic to him getting his sons back in there, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, but yes, he did claim we were nobodies.
Yeah,
I mean, he was right. I mean, out of character, he was right.
Yeah, he's I don't know. I like parts of Tolkien mythology are really, or Tolkien lore are really interesting to me. And this idea, the more I delve into it, the more this idea of like Gondorian political, call them political refugees, I guess, going down to Umbar was like, oh, and it's not just something that happened during the kin strife, 500 years ago. It's happening right now in Tolkien lore, right? And so I'm like, what an interesting space. It's not, I think one of you said early in the evening, you said, we are the enemy. And I'm like, that's true, but you're also, you were also the next door neighbor 2 years ago, right?
Well, I kind of feel like in the United States today, the Cuban American population is like exiled Gondorians, right? They love Cuba. They want to go back to Cuba. They just hate the regime, right? And so they want to overthrow the communist regime there. No, listen, I was thinking about this campaign. This has been an incredible exploration of the blank space of Tolkien, right? Like you said, you don't get a lot of Umbar and Abercon in the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and like Andrew said, both of these places have amazing food. So I think, yeah, I mean, you don't get a lot, and but the reality is that there's enough said about these places. Not once you go further south on the map, I lose all real interest because you don't really know anything. But with these two, we have enough that we can say, oh, there's some really interesting situations going on here, and I don't know, it's just been fun to explore. It's the same thing that we did with our early campaigns when we talked about where's the line between, you know, elf and orc, you know, in the Second Age.
Yep.
This is in that same vein of, it's like there's just enough information for us to get to ask some fun questions and explore some fun things and not feel like we're just making up everything. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I'm excited to see, like, legitimately how you guys wrap it up. I have a really wild potential ending for you guys next time. If things go a certain way, your reward will be a very wild ending. But
hold on. Okay. You know, I spent a lot of time on role play and negotiation and being diplomatic, right? I mean, both of you have been with me for a long time. I do not see the probability path that this is a diplomatic resolution.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are closer than I gave you credit for. I mean, I think it's within reach. It just, you know, there's gotta be, you know, a roll. That said, I think that what I tried to communicate there at the end is, like, even if you reach an agreement between the four of you and this guy, that does not mean that we say, and you won. And all the other treaties go well, and everybody else says yay, and everybody parties, and it's best friends, and you go tear down Paradur before it can even be rebuilt. There's a lot of other things at play there, but I think that, like, the thing that I'm hoping that we can do next time is, like, like, personally, I'm like, we can do an epilogue or whatever, but, like, I don't really care about what happens in all of that context. I care about, can you guys actually succeed on this mission, on this quest, right? Yeah. Can you actually walk down that road, negotiating with all those people, get to Umbar, and successfully get him to come to to put together a treaty that you can then take back to Ecthelion and the Golden King and whoever. If you can do that, that's the win of this campaign. Everything else, whatever happens after that, will be fun and interesting maybe, but it's your personal victories are within grasp, I think. So
in the HBO version of this is how this ends. We managed to successfully sign the treaty, potentially having to throw in Sumerian into a marriage. If it's Game of Thrones, definitely, like, and it would be consummated right there on the trade table. But anyway, so we successfully complete that, and just as we sign the treaty, the Golden King's army arrives on one side, and just as they're about to take over Umbar, Gondorian fleet arrives on the other side, and that's when there's a season 1 cliffhanger.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. As Andrew said aptly in chat, what I'm trying to say politely is that I'm going to murder all of you no matter what next session. Yeah, and Craig, you're absolutely right. So we're going to wrap up this next time, and then I'm going to be running a little Zweihander campaign about the same size on stream afterwards. So I think the Zweihander one will start around the 14th or whatever. No, I think this one ends on the 14th. So around the 14th, though, we're going to start the Zweihander one. And it'll be great. But yeah, it's good. The Golden Wedding, exactly. I love
the Golden Wedding. Yes,
Andrew's giving us all sorts of ideas. Yeah.
We got it.
Yeah,
we
exactly. We got there.
HBO, call me.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think it'll be great. So we'll see how it goes. But I had a lot of fun, and I'm glad we did this campaign. I don't know that I will ever do a hardcore diplomatic campaign in Middle Earth ever again, but I'm really, like, I had this idea for a Gondor campaign doing exactly this for several years, and I'm really glad that we did it, and that it legitimately did not devolve into a whole bunch of combats all the time. It legitimately was diplomacy 9 times out of 10, and that's cool.
I had to forcefully hold Ulysses back from going into that dungeon.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You guys can raid the Carnal Ruins and fight werewolves next campaign. That would be really fun. Yeah, cool. All right, well, hey.
Actually, it was great. I mean, look, I had a lot of fun. Thank you for it. Thank you, Andrew and Craig, for being in chat. And I'm looking forward to the conclusion.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, okay.
We'll see you guys later. Yeah, see you later.
Yeah.